The evening sun was dropping behind the quiet hills when Cole Turner rode his old chestnut horse along the forgotten trail. He had taken this path many times in his younger days, but now he used it only when he wanted silence. The trail didn't lead anywhere important anymore. It simply wound through dry land, past old mesquite trees, and long stretches of cracked earth. Cole liked it because no one else used it. After years of living alone, he had grown comfortable with the company of his horse, the wind, and his own thoughts. But something felt different that day. As he rode, he kept noticing that the land looked disturbed, as if someone had rushed through earlier. Broken branches, small footprints, and dust that had been unsettled. Cole slowed his horse, looking around with careful eyes. He wasn't expecting trouble, but the land was giving him a quiet warning. A few minutes later, his eyes caught something unusual, a small bundle of color between two fallen branches. At first, he thought it was a dropped blanket or maybe an animal tangled in cloth. But as he rode closer, he realized it wasn't an object, it was a person. A girl. He stopped his horse at once and stepped down, his boots crunching softly on the dry earth. He walked forward carefully, not wanting to scare whoever it was or make any wound worse. As he reached the figure, his breath caught. It was a young Apache girl, barely more than a teenager. She lay half on her side, her body weak and trembling. Her long dark hair was tangled and dusty. Her clothes torn, as if she had traveled through rough land or been pushed harshly aside. Her arms were scratched, her lips dry, and her breathing so shallow that for a moment Cole feared she was already gone. He knelt beside her and spoke softly. "Hey, can you hear me?" His voice was gentle, the same voice he used when calming a frightened horse. The girl's eyelids moved a little. She struggled to open them, but she couldn't lift her head. Cole reached for her wrist to check her pulse. It was faint, but it was there, thin and fragile, like a whisper of life still fighting. She tried to speak, but only a broken Apache word came out. He didn't understand the language, but he understood pain and fear. "You're all right," Cole said in the calmest tone he could manage. "I've got you." He looked around quickly, trying to understand what had happened. There were no signs of a fight, no tracks of horses or wagons nearby. But the small footprints on the trail looked like they belonged to a group moving quickly, too quickly for someone as weak as this girl to keep up. The thought made him frown. Had she been left behind? Or had something scared the group into abandoning her? Whatever happened, he couldn't leave her there. Night was coming, and the desert cold could be cruel. Coyotes roamed freely after dark. Even a healthy person would struggle to survive. This girl had no chance at all if he walked away. He slipped his arms under her gently. She winced, even though she was almost unconscious, which told him her body was hurting more than he could see. He lifted her slowly, making sure not to bend her limbs awkwardly, and carried her to his horse. His horse, a calm and loyal animal named Rusty, stood still as Cole placed the girl in front of the saddle. Cole took his time getting her positioned so she wouldn't fall. Her head rested weakly against his arm. Once he was sure she wouldn't slip, he climbed up behind her and held her carefully. "Hang on," he whispered. Even though he knew she might not hear him, he turned the horse toward home and started the long ride back to his ranch. The path was rough, and he kept the pace slow to avoid jarring her injuries. The desert grew colder as the sun disappeared, and the air filled with the lonely sounds of night birds. Cole felt the girl shiver faintly. She was fading fast. He adjusted his coat and wrapped part of it around her small frame. She was so light, he could feel every breath she took. Every few minutes, her head would tilt as if she were slipping deeper into unconsciousness. He spoke softly, almost whispering stories about the land, about his horse, about anything he thought might keep her anchored to life. "Just stay awake a little longer," he murmured. "We're almost there." But she didn't reply. She couldn't. Her strength was nearly gone. Cole's ranch sat alone near a cluster of cottonwoods, miles from the nearest town. It wasn't big or fancy, just a single cabin, a barn, a few fences, and wide open land stretching in all directions. For most people, it would feel lonely. For Cole, it was peace. By the time he reached the ranch, darkness had fully settled. He rode straight to the cabin and carefully lifted the girl off the horse. He carried her as gently as he could, trying not to cause more pain. Inside the cabin, he laid her on his bed. He had no other place soft enough for her. He lit a lamp, bringing warm light into the room, then fetched water and a clean cloth. He checked her injuries with the same calm patience he used with wounded animals. Her legs were bruised, her arms scratched, and her body thin from lack of food. But there were no broken bones that he could see. He placed a wet cloth on her forehead to cool her down, then poured a small amount of water into a cup. He held her head slightly and tried to help her drink. She swallowed only a sip before drifting off again. "You're safe here," he said quietly, even though her eyes remained closed. He warmed a small pot of broth and tried again to feed her. This time she managed a few small sips. It wasn't much, but it gave him hope. Hours passed as he watched over her. Sometimes she stirred and whispered words he didn't recognize. Sometimes she opened her eyes just long enough to see him before falling asleep again. Each time she woke, she looked confused, frightened, unsure of where she was. "Easy," he would say. "You're safe. No one will hurt you here." At one point, she grabbed his wrist weakly, her fingers trembling. She whispered something in Apache so faint he almost missed it, and then tears slid slowly down her dusty cheeks. Cole didn't understand what she said, but he understood the meaning. She was scared. She was alone. She thought she had been left behind, forever. Cole gently wiped the tears from her face with the corner of a cloth. He kept watch the whole night, not sleeping, not even resting his eyes. He sat in the chair beside the bed, elbows on his knees, hands folded, watching her breathing to make sure it didn't stop. Sometimes she breathed so softly that he had to lean close to feel the faint warmth of her breath on his hand. By early morning, her breathing was a little stronger. Not good, but better. When she opened her eyes again, she looked at him with a clearer expression. She didn't speak, just watched him carefully, as if trying to understand who he was. Cole placed a cup of warm water in her hands. She tried to drink, spilling a little. But she managed a few more sips. She kept her eyes on him, not with fear this time, but with curiosity. "My name's Cole," he said gently. She looked confused, then closed her eyes again, thinking. After a long moment, she whispered a word, soft, slow, almost unsure. "Nayeli." Cole repeated it so she knew he understood. "Nayeli, that your name?" She nodded faintly. Her voice was almost gone from exhaustion, so she didn't try to speak again. But she didn't look scared anymore. Something in her eyes softened, as if she finally believed she wasn't in danger. Cole continued caring for her through the morning, feeding her small spoonfuls of broth, helping her drink water, making sure she was warm. Each time she drifted off to sleep, he checked on her again to be certain she was still breathing. His movements were slow, patient, gentle, like handling a fragile bird. He didn't know who she was beyond her name. He didn't know why she had been abandoned. He didn't know what dangers this situation might bring. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty. Leaving her on that trail would have been wrong. As the sunlight filled the cabin and warmed the wooden floor, Nayeli slept finally without fear. Her breathing was steady, and her body looked less tense. Cole stood near the window, watching the quiet land outside. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring. But for now, she was safe, and he would do whatever he could to keep her that way. Nayeli woke to the soft rustling of someone moving nearby. For a moment she forgot where she was. Her heart jumped in fear as her eyes opened quickly. scanning the wooden ceiling and the unfamiliar room. Then she felt a gentle breeze from the open window, smelled warm broth heating on the stove, and heard the calm footsteps of the man who had brought her here. Her breathing slowed a little when she saw Cole moving quietly around the room, tending to the fire. He noticed her awake and walked over, keeping his distance so he didn't startle her. "Morning," he said softly. "You're looking better today." His voice held no force, no demand, just steady kindness. Nayeli tried to sit up, but her body felt stiff and weak. She winced and leaned back again. Cole stepped forward slightly, but stopped, letting her decide how much help she wanted. After a moment, he picked up a small wooden cup and held it toward her. "Water," he said gently. "Slow sips." She hesitated, her dark eyes watching him carefully, unsure if she should trust him. But her throat was painfully dry, so she reached for the cup with trembling hands. Cole supported the bottom lightly, helping her raise it without spilling. The cool water eased some of the burning dryness inside her chest. She lowered the cup after a few small sips, her gaze drifting around the cabin. She saw shelves filled with tools, a table covered with folded blankets, a pair of boots near the door, and the saddle he had removed from his horse. Everything was clean and neatly placed. He lived simply, but not carelessly. Cole sat down in the chair beside the bed. "You're safe," he said again, as if repeating it might help her trust him. "You were in bad shape when I found you." Nayeli looked down at her hands, twisting the edge of the blanket. She whispered something in Apache, her voice almost breaking. Cole shook his head gently to show he didn't understand, but he didn't interrupt. She tried again, using simple English. "Left. Me," she said slowly. "Tribe. Gone." Cole listened quietly. He didn't push her for more, sensing the memory hurt her. She looked like someone who had carried fear for a long time. He rose from the chair and turned toward the stove. "You need food," he said simply, "a little at a time." He ladled warm broth into a small bowl and brought it to her. She ate with slow, careful bites. Each spoonful gave her a little more strength, though she still felt weak. After she finished, she lay back on the pillow, her eyes half closed. Cole went about his chores inside the cabin but stayed within her sight so she wouldn't feel abandoned. He never made sudden moves or loud noises. He didn't touch her unless she clearly needed help. He understood that she was frightened and needed time to trust him. As the sun rose higher, Nayeli drifted in and out of light sleep. Each time she opened her eyes, she saw Cole either chopping wood, cleaning tools, or writing something quietly at the table. She noticed that he checked on her every few minutes, sometimes pretending he wasn't doing it. But she saw the quick glances. His quiet care softened something inside her. By midday, she had enough strength to whisper more words. "Why? Help me." Cole paused, his hand resting on the edge of the table. "Because you were alone," he said honestly. "Because you were hurt. Because it was the right thing to do." She studied him, searching for hidden intentions. There were none. His face held only calm sincerity. It confused her. She was used to fear, suspicion, and harsh voices. Being treated gently felt unreal. She tried to sit up again and this time succeeded with effort. Cole didn't rush to her side but moved slowly, offering support if she wanted it. When she didn't push him away, he placed a pillow behind her back. "You don't need to talk," he said. "Just rest." Nayeli looked at the light coming through the window. The sun warmed her face. For the first time, in many days, her body felt safe. Not comfortable, but safe. She took a steady breath and began speaking in broken English. "Tribe move. Fast. Sick before. Some think I bring trouble. Too slow. They leave." Her words came out haltingly, with long pauses. But Cole listened with complete attention. He didn't judge her or her people. He understood that fear and superstition could make people act in ways they later regretted. "I fall," she said, touching her bruised arm. "Can't walk far." "I," Cole nodded. "You must have been out there for hours." She nodded weakly. "Thought I die." "You won't," he said with firm calm. "Not here." Her eyes softened again at his words. She lowered her head, unsure how to respond to such simple certainty. She hadn't heard anyone speak to her like that in a long time. For the next few days, Cole continued to care for her. He checked her wounds, fed her light meals, and made sure she drank enough water. Nayeli gained strength slowly. She moved from lying down to sitting up, then to taking a few steps inside the cabin. Each time she struggled, Cole stayed close, but never hovered too much. He knew she was proud, and he didn't want to make her feel helpless. Sometimes she watched him as he worked outside mending fences, feeding his horse, carrying buckets of water. He worked with quiet focus. There was no one to talk to, so he hummed gently while he worked. She found the soft sounds calming. In the evenings, she sat on the edge of the bed and listened to the wind outside. The days were quiet, but not lonely. Cole spoke only when needed, but his presence filled the silence in a comfortable way. It was strange for her to feel safe beside someone she barely knew. One night, after a long day of rest, she looked at Cole with hesitant eyes. "You live alone?" He nodded. "Been that way for a long time." She lowered her gaze to the floor. "Not lonely?" "Sometimes," he admitted, "but I got used to it." She didn't say anything for a long moment. She knew loneliness too well. It was a feeling that sat heavy on a person's heart. Hearing him say it so simply made him feel more human, less distant. As days passed, she learned more English, using simple words that Cole helped her pronounce. He never laughed when she made mistakes. He corrected her gently, encouraging her to try again. She felt a small sense of pride each time she learned a new word. One afternoon, while Cole was repairing a broken fence near the cabin, Nayeli walked outside for the first time. Her legs were shaky, and she used the wall for support, but she made it to the doorway. The warm air touched her face, and she breathed deeply. Cole saw her and stepped toward her, worried she might fall, but she shook her head to show she wanted to stand on her own. "You're getting stronger," he said with a soft smile. She nodded, then looked out at the ranch. The land stretched wide and open, the fields dry but peaceful. Rusty the horse stood near the gate, flicking his tail lazily. Chickens clucked near the small coop. Everything felt steady and calm. Nayeli walked slowly to a nearby bench and sat down. Cole continued working but kept glancing her way, ready to help if she needed it. She watched him fix the fence, noticing the way he moved with steady hands and patience. She wondered how long he had lived like this alone, surrounded by land and silence. When he finished, he wiped sweat from his brow and came to sit on the bench beside her. He didn't sit close, just near enough that she knew he wasn't avoiding her. "Feel all right?" he asked. She nodded. "Better. Much better." A small smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. Cole saw it and felt something warm inside his chest. He didn't show it, but it meant more than he expected. Seeing her alive and healing made all the effort worth it. As the days turned into a week, Nayeli grew stronger. She started helping with simple chores, folding blankets, sweeping the floor, feeding chickens with slow steps. Cole tried to stop her, insisting she needed rest. But she was determined. Helping made her feel useful again. It also made her feel like she belonged, even if only a little. One evening, as the sun set behind purple clouds, Nayeli watched the sky from the doorway. Cole stood beside her, quiet, as always. She spoke softly. "I afraid before. When wake here." "I know," he said. She looked at him, her eyes deep but gentle. "Now. Not afraid." Cole didn't speak. He didn't need to. His expression softened, and Nayeli felt her heart ease in a way she hadn't felt in a long time. She still didn't know what the future held. She didn't know if her tribe would return or if danger would follow her. But she knew one thing for certain: she was no longer alone. And the man who found her had given her something she thought she had lost forever: hope. The calm days at the ranch slowly began to feel normal to Nayeli. Each morning she woke to the smell of warm bread or the gentle crackle of the fire that Cole prepared before sunrise. Each afternoon she stepped outside to feel the sun on her skin, to breathe the free air, and to help with whatever small tasks she could manage. And each evening she watched the sky turn golden and purple as Cole tended to the last chores of the day. But she also sensed something in Cole, something heavy beneath his calm voice. He didn't speak of it, and she never asked. But she watched him study the horizon, more often, as if expecting something to arrive. His posture would grow tense when he looked toward the distant hills. He listened too closely to the wind, to footsteps, to the faint echoes of riders far away. It wasn't fear, it was readiness. Nayeli noticed it, especially when the days grew hotter. Cole would pause in his work and scan the open land as if searching for movement. She wanted to ask what worried him, but she didn't know if she had the right. This was his land, his home, and she was still a guest, someone he had rescued, but who brought unknown risks. On a quiet afternoon, she sat outside on the short wooden steps near the cabin. Cole was repairing a water trough near the barn, hammering small nails with slow, precise strokes. The sound echoed across the still ranch. Rusty grazed lazily in the fenced field, tail swaying gently. Nayeli watched the gentle life around her, feeling a sense of peace that she had never known before. She touched her arm, remembering the cold, lonely night she had expected to die. Now she was sitting under the warm sun, breathing freely, with a man who had shown her more kindness than she had ever received from her own people. Just as she closed her eyes to enjoy the quiet breeze, she heard hoofbeats, faint at first, then clearer, steady, purposeful. Her eyes snapped open. She turned toward the sound, her heart beginning to pound. Cole heard them too. He stopped hammering instantly, the silence cutting sharply across the ranch. His head tilted slightly as he listened. The hoofbeats grew closer. 2 riders, maybe 3. Cole wiped his hands on his trousers and walked slowly toward the cabin, placing himself slightly in front of Nayeli without saying a word. His movement told her everything. He had been expecting something like this. Nayeli's breath grew shallow. Her fingers closed tightly around the edge of the step. She felt that familiar fear rise inside her, the one she thought she had left behind. Her pulse quickened, and her stomach tightened. She already knew who was coming. She didn't have to see them to understand. The riders appeared from behind the hill, 3 men, dressed in buckskins, with markings and feathers that she recognized immediately. Members of her tribe. They rode with stern expressions, their faces unreadable as they approached the ranch. Nayeli felt as if the ground was shaking beneath her. Cole stepped down from the porch and walked calmly to greet them, standing several yards away from the cabin. He kept his posture relaxed, but there was firmness in the way he planted his feet. The riders stopped their horses, looking around with cold eyes. One of the men, older and broader than the others, narrowed his eyes at Cole. "You found Apache girl," the man said in broken English, his voice low and sharp. "You bring her here." Cole nodded slowly. "I found her hurt. She would have died out there." Nayeli stayed near the door, cheeks pale, breathing quick and unsteady. She didn't want to be seen, but staying hidden felt wrong. She slowly stood and stepped onto the porch. Her legs trembled under her. The men noticed her immediately. One of them muttered something in Apache, shaking his head. Another looked away, unable to meet her eyes. The oldest kept his gaze hard. Cole took a small step forward, as if shielding her without making it obvious. Nayeli's voice trembled as she whispered her tribe's language. The older man replied sharply, his tone filled with frustration, shame. and something more complicated, something closer to regret, that he was trying to hide. Cole didn't understand the words, but he understood the emotion. He kept his expression steady. "If you came here to take her by force," he said quietly, "you should know I won't allow it." The men stiffened. They looked at one another. The older one spoke again, slower this time. "We no come fight," he said. "We ask why you take her. Why you keep her." "Keep her?" Cole replied with a hint of disbelief. "I didn't keep her. I saved her." Nayeli swallowed hard and spoke in a shaky whisper in her people's language. Her words sounded fragile, like a thin thread holding her together. The older man looked at her, and, for the first time, his face softened. Just slightly. Enough to show that her presence touched something inside him, even if he didn't want to admit it. He muttered a reply, then looked at Cole again. "She was left behind," he said slowly, as if the words weighed heavily on him. "Some of tribe say she's slow. Bring trouble. We move far. Hard choice." Cole's jaw tightened. "Hard? You left her to die." Quote. The man didn't respond. He looked down at his horse's mane. The other two shifted uncomfortably in their saddles. Shame flickered faintly in their expressions. Nayeli felt her eyes sting. She clasped her hands together, afraid she might fall apart. She wanted to run inside the cabin, hide from them, hide from the memory. But she also wanted to stand strong, to show she wasn't the weak girl they had abandoned. Cole turned slightly so Nayeli could see his face. "If she wants to go back," he said softly, "I won't stop her." "No." His voice was gentle, but it carried strength. He wasn't claiming her. He wasn't keeping her. He was letting her choose. The men watched the exchange closely. Nayeli opened her mouth, but no sound came out. She looked at the tribe members' faces she had once trusted. Faces that had looked at her with fear and suspicion. Faces she had believed would protect her. Now all she felt was an old pain and a new understanding. She did not owe them anything. The silence stretched across the yard like a long shadow. The older man finally spoke. His voice was rough, but quieter. "We not take her," he said. "Not want more trouble." He hesitated, then added something in Apache to Nayeli. His tone wasn't harsh this time. It was almost an apology, but one wrapped in pride, fear, and confusion. She lowered her gaze and nodded faintly, acknowledging the gesture. The riders turned their horses. Before leaving, the older man looked at Cole once more. "You good man," he said simply, the words awkward, almost forced. Then he rode away without waiting for a reply. Cole didn't move until the riders were far across the plain. Only then did he turn toward Nayeli. She was still standing on the porch, hands shaking, her body stiff like she was holding herself together with sheer will. He walked toward her slowly. "Are you all right?" She tried to answer, but the moment she saw the concern in his eyes, the strength in her legs gave out. Cole quickly stepped forward and caught her before she could fall. She didn't faint, she simply collapsed from the heavy weight of fear leaving her body. He helped her sit on the steps. She took deep breaths, tears filling her eyes. She wiped them away quickly, ashamed to show weakness. But Cole knelt in front of her and spoke softly. "You don't have to hide it," he said. "It was a lot." She looked at him with trembling lips. "They leave me once, maybe come again. Then I'll be here," he replied without hesitation. "You're not alone anymore." His words struck her heart like warm sunlight breaking through dark clouds. She didn't speak. She simply stared at him, her eyes full of fear, relief, confusion, and gratitude, all mixed together. Cole sat beside her as the sun dipped behind the hills. The ranch was quiet again. But something had changed, not just for Nayeli, but for him too. He realized how fiercely he wanted to protect her, not because she needed saving, but because he cared. Nayeli leaned her head lightly against the cabin wall, letting out a long, shaky breath. She was still afraid, but something inside her felt stronger now. For the first time in her life, someone had stood between her and danger, not for obligation, not for tribe, not for survival, but simply because he believed she deserved safety. The fear that once ruled her heart slowly loosened its grip. She wasn't healed. She wasn't confident. But she was no longer abandoned. And she knew now, without any doubt, that the man who had found her on the trail was the one person she could trust with her fragile, rebuilding life. The afternoon after the riders left was strangely quiet. The ranch always had a calm stillness to it. But this silence felt heavier, like the air itself was holding its breath. Nayeli sat on the porch for a long time, her hands resting in her lap as she tried to steady her racing thoughts. Her heart still felt shaken. But the fear was no longer sharp. It had softened, replaced with something she could not fully understand yet. Cole didn't rush her. He leaned on the post nearby, keeping a quiet watch without crowding her. His presence felt steady, like a shelter against a storm that had finally passed. He knew better than to fill the silence with questions. Some things needed time to settle. After a while, Nayeli's breathing slowed, and she lifted her gaze toward the open land. The sun was starting to fall behind the hills, casting a golden glow across the ranch. She let the warmth wash over her face. The world felt calmer. Cole finally spoke, his voice gentle. "You don't have to decide anything today." She looked at him, her dark eyes searching for meaning. She shook her head slightly, trying to put her feelings into words. "They not want me," she said softly. "But still, they are my people." Cole nodded. "I know." He didn't tell her what she should feel. He didn't tell her to stay or to go. He simply listened. Nayeli took another deep breath. "You don't have to know right now," he replied. "You've been through a lot. Let yourself rest first." His patience surprised her again. Many people she had known rushed to make decisions, pushed her to meet expectations, or treated her feelings as unimportant. Cole was different. He let her move at her own pace, like a person deserving respect. Night approached, and the sky turned a deep shade of purple. Cole prepared supper, simple food, warm and comforting. Nayeli ate quietly, though her mind still wandered. After they finished, she helped wash the dishes slowly, her movements steady but thoughtful. Cole could see she was thinking deeply, but he didn't ask what was on her mind. Later, when they stepped outside again, the land was covered in darkness, except for the stars. Nayeli looked up, her eyes reflecting the silver light above. For a moment she felt small, but in a peaceful way. The world was huge, full of open places and choices she had never imagined before. Cole stood beside her, hands resting lightly on his belt. After a few minutes, he said softly, "No matter what happens next, you're safe here, as long as you want to be." Nayeli turned toward him. Something in her chest tightened, an emotion she didn't know how to name. Gratitude, maybe, or trust, or something deeper that scared her a little because she wasn't used to it. "I feel strong here," she whispered, almost surprised by her own words. Cole nodded, the corners of his mouth lifting in a small smile. "Good. That's how it should be." That night she slept more peacefully than she had in weeks. She dreamt of quiet wind and warm sunlight, not fear or running. When morning came, she felt a new clarity inside her, not a full decision, but a growing understanding. Over the next days, life returned to its gentle pace. Nayeli helped with chores more confidently. She gathered eggs from the chicken coop, fed Rusty carefully, folded blankets with perfect corners, and swept the cabin floor with soft steps. Little by little, the cabin became less of a shelter and more of a home to her. Cole watched her with quiet pride. He noticed small but important changes. Her posture straightening, her voice sounding steadier, her steps growing firmer. She still spoke slowly, still used simple English, but she tried more words each day. He corrected her kindly when she needed it, and smiled when she got something right on her own. One afternoon, Cole took her with him to a nearby field to check the water lines. The sun was warm, and the dry grass rustled softly. Nayeli walked beside him, feeling calm. It amazed her how natural it felt to share space with him. He didn't speak much, but his silence was comforting, not uneasy. Rusty grazed nearby as Cole repaired a loose pipe. Nayeli handed him tools when he asked, learning the names of each one as she passed them. She liked his voice when he explained things steady, patient, never harsh. When they finished, she sat on a fallen log while Cole checked the sky for signs of weather. The wind brushed her long hair across her shoulder. She caught a strand and looked at it, thinking about all the places she had been, all the fears she had carried. Cole walked back and sat near her. Not too close, but close enough that she could feel his warmth in the breeze. "You're stronger every day," he said softly. "Your spirit isn't broken." Nayeli lowered her gaze. "I thought it was," she admitted. "When they leave me, I think I am nothing." Cole shook his head. "You're not nothing. You never were. They were wrong to make you believe that." Her throat tightened. She blinked quickly, trying to stop the tears that threatened to rise. "Why you care?" she whispered. He took a small breath. "Because people deserve kindness. Because leaving you would have been wrong. And because you matter." The last two words hit her harder than she expected. She looked at him, her eyes wide and soft. No one had ever said that to her, not like this, not with this sincerity. She turned her face away, overwhelmed. Cole didn't say anything else. He let her absorb the moment. Over the next week, Nayeli grew more certain about her feelings. The fear of her tribe returning faded. The memory of being abandoned slowly loosened its hold. And the ranch began to feel like a safe world where she could choose her own path without being judged. But one evening, as the sun dipped low and the sky turned orange, a lone figure approached the ranch from the hills. Not a group this time, just one. Nayeli noticed first. She touched Cole's arm gently, alerting him. He looked toward the rider and narrowed his eyes. As the rider came closer, Nayeli recognized the person, the older woman from her tribe. Her heart thumped hard. But this time, she didn't step back. She held her ground. The woman rode slowly and stopped a short distance away. She climbed down from her horse without a harsh expression. Her face was lined with age and wisdom, not anger. She approached with hands open, not demanding, not threatening. She spoke in Apache, her voice calm and sincere. Nayeli listened, her expression shifting from caution to surprise. The woman's tone carried regret. She was not here to take Nayeli back. She was here to say something that needed to be said. Cole waited quietly, watching Nayeli for any sign of distress. But Nayeli's face softened as the woman continued speaking. When she finished, Nayeli nodded slowly, her eyes shimmering with emotions she couldn't hide. The woman placed a gentle hand on Nayeli's shoulder for a brief moment, then stepped back. She looked at Cole and nodded, respectfully, a quiet acknowledgement of his kindness. Then she mounted her horse and rode away across the open land. Nayeli stood still long after she disappeared. Cole walked to her side and asked softly, "What did she say? What did she say?" Nayeli took a deep breath. She said, "They made mistake." She said some were afraid, some confused. She said, "I am free. Free to go back. Free to stay. Free to choose my life." Cole nodded. "It's your choice. Whatever you decide, I'll support you." Nayeli looked at the cabin, at Rusty grazing, At the fence Cole had repaired. At the small world that had protected her. Then she looked at Cole, the man who had given her safety without expecting anything in return. Her voice was steady when she finally spoke. "I want to stay." Cole felt a warmth spread in his chest, deeper than relief, something that touched the quiet loneliness inside him. But he didn't show too much emotion. He simply nodded, his voice soft. "Then stay." Nayeli smiled, not a small, shy smile, but a bright, warm one filled with hope. Cole met her gaze, and for a moment the whole world seemed calm, as if everything had finally found its rightful place. As the sun set behind the hills, painting the land in soft gold, the ranch no longer felt like a lonely stretch of dust and silence. It felt alive, filled with the beginning of something new, something gentle, something strong. Two lives that had been broken in different ways were no longer alone. They had found safety, trust, and peace in each other's presence. And as the first stars appeared above, Nayeli knew she had chosen not just a place to stay, but a place to heal, to grow, and to live freely at last.